Yeah, great. Hello all, welcome to another special session of our hackathon. Before going further into the session, let me give a quick intro of Nader Dabit. Nader was a director of developer relations at Aave and Lens Protocol, which are the biggest names in the world of Web3. Also, Nader worked with big tech companies like AWS, Google, Microsoft, and more. Let's hear more from Nader himself. Hey Nader, welcome to our special session. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah. You have more than 100,000 Twitter followers, more than 40,000 YouTube subscribers. How you have achieved that? Like what you have done, just introduce your story a little bit. Like, how did you figure all this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's been kind of like a long journey and consistent grind over the course of years. I think for me, I think some people have more of like a fast, quick success, but for me, it's taken me a good, 10 or 11 years, I think at this point to kind of to get to where I am today. And I started off as like a self-taught developer, and I then started getting jobs as a front end developer, and then I moved into mobile development, where I focus on React Native and cross platform application development. After a couple of years, I then pivoted again into cloud computing, where I worked with AWS for a little over 3 years and kind of like combine my front end knowledge with cloud, enabling me to kind of just do a lot more with that skill set and being able to build out full stack applications using scalable infrastructure. That was a lot of fun. And then I started learning about blockchains, and I felt that there was a ton of potential there. And it was kind of one of those opportunities where it was still very, very early and exciting place to be. So I decided to leave Amazon and join the world of blockchain and Web3. That was in early 2021.
Great.
And yeah,
You
since then
have
I've been
been
doing developer relations. Yeah.
yeah, you have been working with top tech companies around the world. Also, you regularly post on Twitter, create content on YouTube. How are you balancing all these things?
Well, the good thing about being in developer relations as a job is that like you're able to focus on that type of stuff as your job. So there's often a lot of flexibility if you're in developer relations for you to be able to experiment and learn different technologies that are not really relevant to your main day-to-day work, and therefore we get more opportunities, I think, to create the content that we create based on the things that we're learning. So it's like if you're an engineer and you're working on a code base for 40 hours a week, by the time you're done with your normal work, you might either not have the time or not have the energy to then go and like explore and learn something different. But if that's what you do for your 40 hours a week, I think it's a lot different, and therefore we're very fortunate. And if that's like what you like to do, it's a good place to be in DevRel. Like for me, I do like to do that stuff, so it works out really good.
Present, you are the director of developer relations at Aave and Lens Protocol. How does your day-to-day work look like?
Yeah, so I've been doing developer relations, like I said, for a little over 5 years. I've been a in management in DevRel in a couple of different places. At AWS, I was managing the DevRel team there. At the Graph, I was ultimately managing a very small team there. And I've only been with Aave for about a month now, so I'm still fairly new. So I'm still trying to kind of figure out what the best workflow is and what are the things I should focus on. But um, I have two people that are on my team that are really, really incredible. So part of my like day to day is just kind of like communicating with them and understanding the work that they're doing, and maybe finding opportunities to help them out if possible, or just to kind of have a good communication channels open with them and all of that. And then for my personal day to day, I'm trying to figure out what are the most impactful things that I can do, and then just essentially create like a schedule, or for me it's a Kanban board where I kind of line up all of those activities and I just start working on them and getting them done, one by one. So it's kind of like a combination of interacting with my team, where you know just prioritizing work. And then also we're trying to kind of plan out our 2023 schedule and budget for travel, because part of like DevRel is often attending all these events, but we want to make sure that we don't kind of get burnt out and do too much travel. So we're trying to kind of like prioritize what that will look like in 2023 as early as possible, so we can kind of have a more, I would say, like non-chaotic schedule than maybe what we did this year.
We heard that you don't have any traditional education. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. For me, the everything that I've learned has been just online. Really online, because I don't even have a high school diploma. I did not finish high school, so that traditional path is definitely not something that I took. I think that at this point, though, there's so much high quality educational content available for anyone to use for free that you know, it's not the case for certain professions. Like if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, there's a lot of like red tape that you can't really overcome without the traditional institutions for certain jobs. But for software engineering, most of the time, the most important thing is just being capable of accomplishing a certain task. And if you can kind of show a company that you can do that, or if you can just learn how to do that, you can even build your own company. And there are a lot less restrictions. There's a lot less gatekeeping. There's a lot less red tape than in many other professions. So once I kind of realized that, I realized that this was kind of like an opportunity for me, because I didn't have that traditional education, but I could still possibly become successful in an industry without having to kind of go back to school for 4 to 8 years or something. So yeah, I just kind of found the highest quality educational stuff that I could find, and I used it, and over time kind of continue to use it, actually. And now I often go back and try to create my own educational content to kind of give to other people that might be in a similar situation as I was a long time ago.
You weren't born with a silver spoon. Definitely, you must went through a lot of ups and downs in your life. So tell us, what is your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I think the biggest failure was like when I first got my first tech job. I was living in the Southeast United States in Mississippi. The first job that I was able to get was in California, which is literally, I don't know how many miles away, but like a couple of thousand miles away. It's a very long way. So in order for me to take that job, I had to actually move to California. So I was married and I had a kid at the time, and I convinced my wife that, hey, I want to like move to California and take this job because like I think tech would be a good opportunity. So we we packed up and we moved and relocated, and then I got fired from that job about 2 months after I got there. And that was like a really low time for me in my life, because I had literally bet everything on this one job, and then I got fired from it.
Good, good. What is one thing you wish you have known before you began your professional journey?
I think that just being able to understand and overcome imposter syndrome is extremely important for people. I think that it holds a lot of people back because they think that everyone around them knows more than they do, when in reality, they would be surprised at the reality of being a software engineer. It's more about being able to feel confident about problem solving as opposed to knowing something already. So I think that if I had realized that maybe earlier, I would have been able to push myself a little harder, a little earlier in my career, and maybe had success at an earlier age.
What advice would you give to someone to pursue a career similar to yours?
So it's different for developer relations and than it is for engineering, but I think there is some overlap. I think this idea of learning in public is really powerful, and in today's world where the hiring pool is international, and it's a lot more likely that you can land a remote job, even if it's not international, but it might be remote within your own country. That the the demand for talent is still high, but also the competition for those jobs is fairly high. And I think the people that stand out are the ones that have kind of made it easy for the hiring manager to identify that that person like knows what they're talking about. So like if you spend a year learning, but everything is in private, and you are up against someone who's spent the last year uploading every single line of code they've written to GitHub, and they've spent time like documenting the things that they've built in GitHub or on some like blog post or something like that. The hiring manager is going to look at these two candidates, even though they might have the exact same skill set. They're going to look at this person who learned in public and probably think that they have a little more confidence in them, because they can literally just look at all of their code and their commits and they can see that this person knows what they're doing. So learning in public is probably the most important thing, in my opinion, for landing a role and also for excelling after your first role.
Present, there is a huge euphoria around Web3. What are your views on Web3?
I think that just like all hype cycles, there's typically like a really big run up where everyone gets excited, and then you have like this big peak, and then you start actually seeing the real world utility of something like slowly start to come back after a big drop. And I think we saw the hype really accelerate in 2021, and it started to die off a little bit this year. Combination of the fact that the market dropped a lot, and that a lot of its technology is like really early stage, and a lot of the ideas that came out of the last bull market were not good. But what we're starting to see, I think, is just the very getting close to that bottom, and we're starting to kind of, in my opinion, start to slowly move back up in a more sustainable way with the hype, like actual utility and like real world like use cases. So I think Web3 social is something that I'm excited about, and obviously like I joined Lens because of that. Also, the work that you start seeing done in the Web2 quote unquote companies, where they're adopting blockchain technologies under the hood, and they're abstracting away the wallet interaction and the Web3 UX that sucks really badly, and the necessity for people to actually buy and own and transfer tokens. Because as more and more blockchains launch, there are now probably hundreds of tokens that exist that you would consider somewhat mainstream, and dozens for sure that are like in the very top that are all kind of competing with each other, and they all have their own networks and they have their own network effects. So when you introduce a new person to Web3 and you try to explain all this stuff to them, it's actually really confusing. So what we've seen, and that actually overcomes this, are abstractions that make it to where the user is just using the app and they have no idea that it's a blockchain app. A good example of this is Reddit, where they implemented the community points system, and they also implemented NFTs. All that stuff is tied to your account, has nothing to do with any wallet interaction, at least to the best of my knowledge. And then you also have like Instagram, who just picked up Arweave yesterday, and they've also used Polygon for their NFTs. You don't really kind of like have to have a wallet or anything. It's just all is kind of abstracted away. And so with this new adoption curve that we're starting to see, it's actually, in my opinion, going to be a lot more sustainable, because you don't really have to worry about just a single like chain becoming successful or a single app becoming successful. All of these blockchain infrastructures are now kind of being used just like the AWS might be used under the hood. It's not exposed to the user. And I think that's, in my opinion, like where we're kind of headed with the actual mass adoption. Same with Web3 social. At Lens, we're working on some really interesting stuff that is along those same lines.
Absolutely. As Naval said, blockchain is the least regulated, most decentralized, most permissionless 24/7, 365 market that are self-funding. Also, developers love from around the world can participate. You can be anonymous or pseudo-anonymous, and nobody has to know who you are. All it matters is the output of your code, right? What
Yeah,
is
yeah. I
one
mean,
myth
I
about
think
Web?
so. There's always going to be a little bit of you know, there's
Yeah,
always going to be areas that kind of might not be 100% for sure what you might consider meritocratic, but like in general, I think that it does offer more opportunity for people without kind of like discriminating based on any particular thing, because like you have so many anonymous people that are like really successful, and not that anyone should have to be anonymous, but it just shows you that like there are and there's people from all around the world that are successful. South America, North America, like Africa, Asia, like people that have made really enormous amounts of money and success that like hadn't have any former, like I would say, opportunities to kind of to grant them maybe in a traditional way where they would need to be given the authority to do something. They just do it, and they become successful.
what is one myth about Web3 that you want to debunk?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I think that a lot of people, they take like a single community or a single area within Web3 and they try to label or paint the entire industry as that one thing. When in reality, it's such a broad, huge community where you have people that are doing art, you have people that are doing finance, you have people that are doing web infrastructure, social media, all types of stuff. I think just trying to kind of like let people understand that you can't really take a single good or a bad thing or a single area and kind of paint the entire industry in that way. Instead, you have to be a little bit more like logical and pragmatic and understand, just like in any massive ecosystem, that there's going to be a million different things going on.
Tell us three names who have been most influential to you.
That's a good question. I think Yaniv Tal, who is the founder of the Graph, who gave me my first job, was very influential. Austin Griffith, who when I first started getting into this stuff, was very kind and helpful and had a lot of educational like material and educational content. Like, yeah, they were both really helpful and influential. And I mean, I guess I could say Vitalik Buterin just because he built Ethereum, and that's kind of where I've spent most of my time and had the most opportunity. And if that didn't exist, I probably wouldn't be here. So I think those three people.
What books are you reading right now?
So, yeah, I'm reading a few different books right now, and I have them saved on my Goodreads app. One of them is called A Guide to the Good Life. It's a Stoic philosophy book. One is Skin in the Game by Nassim Taleb, and the other is Never Split the Difference.
Could you just elaborate a little bit on your crypto portfolio?
On my crypto portfolio?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to go into any specifics, but I'll just say that I typically invest in the things that I actually like and use and am interested in. And I think that I am really extra interested in web infrastructure stuff. So like if someone's doing like an NFT project or NFT marketplace, like I'm not too interested in that, but I am interested in like blockchain infrastructure that I think has a lot of potential. I'm very interested in web infrastructure plays like file storage and things like that. So if you see me talking about it and there's like a token for it, and I'm excited about it, then you can probably assume that I've like bought that and own that.
What are some future plans of you that you are really excited of?
I'm really excited about how the industry as a whole seems to be evolving beyond like this strict decentralization focus and more around user experience focus. And I think like people are understanding the trade-offs between decentralization and user experience a lot right now. And I think that there is no reason to ever compromise censorship resistance, which is I think is the core fundamental reason why all of this stuff exists. But I think people are realizing you can have kind of the best of both worlds. You can have censorship resistance, and you can provide a better UX by often building out like middle layers between the user and the blockchain to provide a better user experience. So a good example of this is Biconomy. Biconomy is kind of building out a lot of SDKs and frameworks and even smart contracts that allow gasless transactions and improve user experience for application developers. I think Accord, which is a almost like an S3 type of service, or maybe like a Dropbox on top of Arweave, which enables anyone in the world to use Arweave without having to have a wallet. I think that's the problem, like with adoption, is like, oh, we expect people to be crypto native in order to use these apps, but really, you shouldn't expect that, in my opinion, and because like it's a lot of work and pain in the butt to get tokens. Like we kind of don't often just assume that everyone has the technical expertise and knowledge that we have, but in reality, it's not only that, but it's also the actual accessibility of being able to have a bank account and sign up for an exchange and buy a token and have it available in that country and transfer it in the wallet and get the right wallet. Like all this stuff is actually a huge barrier to entry. So anyone abstracting that away is really interesting to me. So like, yeah, I think Fleek HQ, which allows you to deploy your applications to IPFS, and in the future they'll enable Arweave, is really cool. It's basically like the Vercel of Web3, except you get more benefits maybe because once Arweave is supported, you have this idea of a permanent application, and that's pretty cool. So yeah, I think that the most interesting applications today are the ones that are kind of building out abstractions to make the user experience really, really good.
Yeah. I hope I covered everything, but if you are in my shoes, what question would you have asked yourself that I didn't?
We've talked about quite a bit. I don't think I have a question in general. I would just say that one thing that like we have going for us in kind of Web3, I think, is that the technology is evolving and we're getting more and more ways to kind of use this tech as we get better and better infrastructure that exists and improvements within that infrastructure. And at first, the only thing you could do was to send money between parties with Bitcoin. And then Ethereum came out, and now you have the ability to kind of execute business logic and have state and functions and like almost real applications running. And then now we have primitives like Arweave that allow file storage. And you also have smart contracts on Arweave and serverless functions and all this stuff. And we started off with just financial use cases. And now we're getting into like a combination of like finance and art with like NFTs and stuff. And now we're going beyond that with social. But I think what ends up happening is like all this stuff builds on top of each other. So the more use cases that come around, the more composability you have, because you're able to mix like financial and these digital assets with like NFTs and authentication and authorization through token gating. And you're able to do all this stuff, and it's all using the same primitives. So like, I think that as we grow, it's going to be like this snowball effect where you kind of have the ability to do a lot with these primitives. And I think right now a good example of that is Web3 social, because like within a single protocol like Lens, you can do stuff like a traditional social network, share posts, follow people, read content, but you can also do financial stuff within there. You can transact with each other. You can actually buy and sell directly on the platform. There's no middleman. Like, and in the future, there might be a tiny like middleman charge for really high quality front ends, but it'll be like 1% or something like that. Whereas like, at the best, your 50% is taken out like on YouTube and TikTok, or in the worst case, like 100%, stuff like Facebook. So yeah, I think that Web3 social is really exciting right now.
Yeah. This is very inspirational to me. Also, I'm sure that all of my participants will find this inspiration, because like Many graduates in India, in Asian countries, even in US, even they graduated from top tier colleges, they're not able to get jobs in that. But you not having had a traditional education, but you got into a very big post like working with AWS, Microsoft, now in Aave, Lens Protocol. It's really an honor for us to call you here. Finally, thank you so much for doing this. It was a pleasure having you. We got a lot of answers. Thank you.
Awesome.